Hola! Today we're going to talk about how to tell time in Spanish. That is, la hora. First of all, when we are telling time, we are going to say, it is 2, it is 3, and we are going to be using the verb to be. And if you'll remember, in Spanish, we actually have two verbs that are to be, ser and estar. So which one are we going to use? Well, first, let's start with estar. Estar really just boils down to three key uses. They are where you are, how you are, and the condition of things, which is different from inherent characteristics. Now, none of these apply to time. Therefore, we are not going to be using estar, and instead, when we're talking about time, we are going to use the verb ser. All right. So first of all, we are going to need to ask, what time is it? And the answer, or the question, is ¿Qué hora es? Which, if you translate word for word, means what hour is it? All right, when we're going to talk about the time, again, we're going to use ser, but then we're going to use las. All right, so if I want to say it's 2 o'clock, I'm going to say son las dos. If I'm going to say it's 3 o'clock, son las tres. 4 o'clock, son las cuatro. 5 o'clock, son las cinco. And 6 o'clock, son las seis. All right. And we would just keep going. Son las siete, son las ocho, son las nueve, son las 10, son las 11, son las 12. Now, please note, even though we are using son, which is plural, we are using las, which is the plural article. The hours themselves, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis, those are going to stay singular. So don't start adding s's to the end of those. All right, now let's talk about 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock is a little bit different because it is singular. So when we want to say it is 1 o'clock, we are going to say es la una. So again, una is singular, therefore we are going to use the singular form. All right. Also note that it is una, not uno, because we're talking about la hora, and la hora is feminine. All right. So now we can say it's 1 o'clock, it's 2 o'clock, it's 5 o'clock, it's 12 o'clock. But what about the minutes? All right. In order to talk about the minutes in Spanish, we do have to keep in mind the old style of clock, which is what was used back in the day. All right. So, and because of this, we have two ways of talking about the minutes depending on the location of the minute hand. So we will either be saying y, or we will be saying menos, and we will get into that. All right. Here's exactly how that's going to work. When the minute hand is on the right-hand side of the clock, we're going to be saying y. But when the minute hand is on the left-hand side of the clock, we're going to be saying menos. All right? So let's focus on the right-hand side for now. So again, anytime we're talking about a period of time that's between the top of the hour and 30, we're going to be using y. In practice, that looks like this. Okay? 7:10. We will say son las 7:10. All right? Let's see another example. It's 11 o'clock. It's actually 11:23. So we'll say son las 11:23. All right. Now, your English thinking brain is going to look at this and say 7:15. But we have to remember that 7:15 is actually a quarter of the minute hand's path around the clock. So when we're talking about the 15s, we're going to say son las 7:15. Now please note, cuarto means quarter. Cuatro means 4. The T and the R switch places. You will need to study this and drill it so that you got your cuatro and your cuarto clear and separate in your mind. All right, let's continue. So this is half past 4. So when we're saying 4:30, we're not going to say 4:30. We're going to say 4:30 because media is half. All right. So that's what happens when the minute hand is on the right-hand side of the clock up until half past. All right. So now let's talk about what's going to happen when the minute hand is on the left-hand side of the clock. Or for you digitally minded folks, when we're talking about 4:31 to 4:59. Okay, basically everything past 30. So when we are telling time in this half of the clock, we need to do the following. And bear with me, this is a little different from the way you're used to doing things. First of all, we are going to round up to the next full hour. Then we're going to subtract whatever minutes, and we're going to use menos to do it. All right, so we're going to go through this step by step so you can fully understand what we're doing. Okay, so here is 7:50. That's the way our digitally oriented minds see this, but an analog clock kind of brain is going to be saying it's almost 8. So, son las 8 menos 10. All right, let's move on. So 9:35, when we round up, we get son las 10, but 25 minutes to, menos 25. All right, here's another one, almost 5 o'clock. Son las 5 menos 8. All right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so 12:45 is almost 1, but remember that 1 is singular. So we will say, es la 1 menos cuarto. Remember that cuarto is quarter. So again, remember that when we're at quarter after or a quarter to, we're always going to be saying cuarto, not quince. Quince is sort of the forbidden number when we're telling time. Okay, let's take a moment to practice this a little bit. So here's what I would like you to do. I would like you to look at each image, and then on a piece of paper, I would like you to write down the time. And the reason I want you to write things down is we have to think a little bit more when we write, and that helps things stick better. Okay, so pause the video, write down the time, and then press play to see if what you wrote is what appears on the screen. All right, go ahead and hit pause and write down 6:37 in Spanish. Muy bien. This would be son las 7 menos 23. Because again, we're over 30, so we round up and then subtract. All right, how about this one? Son las 2:30. All right, next one. Son las 12 menos 12. All right, moving along. Es la 1:05. Next one. Son las 9:16. Notice that there is an accent on the 6 of 16. Also, that accent is on the E, not the I. All right, next one. Son las 3 menos cuarto. Son las 10 menos 6. How'd you do? If you have questions, please make sure you ask your teacher during the next class. All right, next question. What about AM and PM? Okay, well, we don't have AM and PM per se in Spanish. We have phrases. So, for example, when we're talking about in the morning, we're going to say, like 9 in the morning, 9 de la mañana. Or, la consultación es a las 10 de la mañana. All right. In the afternoon, de la tarde. De la tarde. Right? We could say, practicamos deportes a las 3:30 de la tarde. And night, de la noche. right? Nosotros empezamos a estudiar a las 8 de la noche. All right. Now, one really important thing, our concept of morning, afternoon, and evening are not the same in Spain. All right. Let me share a conversation, a real conversation that I had when I was living in Spain. So I was taking Kenpo, which is a martial art. That is my instructor right there, Adolfo. And I was at the gym and I asked, ¿ofrecéis clases de Kenpo por la tarde? Right? Do you have Kenpo class in the afternoon? And Adolfo responds, sí, hay una clase a las 8. And my jaw fell on the floor because to me, 8 o'clock was night. But in Spain, 8 o'clock is very much afternoon. Okay? So let's look at a sample schedule for a store. This is very, very typical for Spain. So we have sort of almost 2 open periods and a closed period in the middle. So de las 9 hasta las 2. And ojo, you can see that that's military time or 24-hour time. This is very common as well. Okay, but that's 9 a.m. to 2, they would consider it a.m. because that's still in the morning. Because what happens after that is everyone goes home and they have lunch, la comida. Okay, so for us, we're going to think 1 o'clock is afternoon, 2 o'clock is afternoon. Not in Spain. That's still considered morning because it's still before lunch. All right. After lunch, whenever you've eaten, then it becomes afternoon. All right. So maybe if you have lunch at 2:30 or 3, you can say 4 o'clock is afternoon at that point. Okay. Stores that closed for la comida are generally open again at 5 in the afternoon and stay open until about 9. All right. So that's sort of considered the afternoon shift for stores. Okay. And then we finally get to call it night pretty much at 9 o'clock. So you would probably say las 9 menos 1 de la tarde, but as soon as you hit 9, you can say de la noche. All right. Even though here we might say night at even 6 o'clock. Certainly at 7 and 8, we're going to be saying at night in English with our sort of American thinking brains. So that is how we say time in Spanish. If you have any questions, please ask your teachers. In the meantime, I hope this was helpful. Hasta luego.